Hi, welcome back. Um, so, in the first video, I went through the April 2003 comics that I used to do, just to catch everyone up. I used to do a webcomic, a web diary comic back in the early 2000s, influenced by the comic artist James Kochalka, as a lot of people were. And I tried to do this for as long as I could because I was kind of bored and lonely, living in London, undiagnosed autistic and ADHD. I was diagnosed just about a year ago. At the age of, I was 46 when I was diagnosed. I'm now 47. So what I'm doing here is just looking back through those comics, giving a bit of a commentary about them, but also kind of looking at them in sort of hindsight, knowing now that I was autistic and had ADHD at the time. I still have ADHD, but was dealing with it, but just didn't know about it. I just knew that I was different, and I was trying to cope. So a couple of things. Firstly, I forgot to mention where the name of my site came from. It was iMachine, and I can't remember why I came up with it. I know where the name came from. It came from a scene that happens in Blade Runner, and Blade Runner is one of those films which I like it, but whenever I try to watch it, I fall asleep. It is so quiet. So there was a scene in there where the replicants go to this sort of really cold facility to ask someone about where they came from, I think, and how they were made. And the guy is telling them they just make eyes there, and I don't know where it came from. I think I just like the word. There are certain words I just like how they sound. Um, and machine is one of those. I think it's a pleasant sounding word when I say it. But the eye part, I think I was just thinking of Blade Runner and the fact that they probably had an eye making machine there because they just made eyes there. It probably wasn't a machine; it's probably hand done. But I just like the name eye machine. The problem is that when you'd say eye machine to people, after I'd after I'd come up with iMachine for my website, um, I think the iMacs started gaining popularity, and especially in a few years later, the iPods. So when you'd say to people, "Oh, iMachine.co.uk," they would write down the letter I machine. So I'd always have to spell it out to them, EYE machine. It became a little bit problematic. So EM World was just iMachine World. But a lot of people, I believe, used to think the comic was called M World, which doesn't make any sense. Probably more than iMachine World, but it was always supposed to be a part of iMachine.co.uk, so that's why it was the iMachine World, my world. So let's pick up where we left off. So we did April, so now we're up to May. Now a lot, the April started off on the 20th, so we're near the end of the month. But May, you can see, I think I did do it for every day here. The other good thing is that I did find all my notebooks. I mentioned in the last video that I'd put them away in the garage. I hadn't. They're over there, just in my bookcase. So this was the first one from W.H. Smith's, an A5 book. I don't know why I had the two giraffes talking. One is saying "I hate you." I don't know if this is flipped. I hate you, and then haha. I don't know why I found that funny. So you can see that the thing is, I don't know where my first comic is, the one with the Easter eggs, or actually I think it's the first couple. Let me just go back to the archive. Oh yeah, so the Easter eggs and the GameCube can't connect. I don't know where they are. I must have just done them on paper somewhere. So I think I bought this when I said I went into the city, and I got two pens. I think this is when I bought this book as well. And I don't know if you can see there is if the Tipex smears will be picked up in the camera, but yeah, a lot of Tipexing on there, and you can see at the bottom, Mistake City, must try harder next time. I was not happy with how that turned out. So it was that, as I said in the last video, it was that night I started trying to do little character studies and trying to get some sort of style I could stick to. So I think like this character up here, this is not mine. This is definitely from something else that I've copied, probably James Kochalka. And it goes on to the other pages as well. So this is James Kochalka's American Elf character, and kind of this one as well. And I just thought, well, I'll draw that and use that as a basis. And you can see my different head shapes taking form there. And on the other side, and I've put circles. I put circles around like this one, but I think actually this one is probably closer to what I ended up with. And like I said, I was trying to copy John and Vasquez, James Kochalka, and later the Henry's Cat Eyes. And then before we even got to that comic, which I mentioned in the last one, I would do these little pencil tests on the flip side of the page, and just I'd work the panels out just with little lines of text over what I wanted to do, and then this was me just trying to pencil test the new character style. So yeah, all these comics are still in here. There are other books as well. When I get to them, I might show you. There was a point. I still remember the point. It's quite sad, isn't it? But my memory works like that. I got to a point where I did buy an A4, an A4 pad, just so I could get a little bit more detail into the strips. So we'll go over this. I might just do like half of this because it might go on too long otherwise, and I'll just start talking about it. So yeah, Beth and Aurelie were introduced in the previous video at the party that I went to, and Aurelie was the one that didn't understand my J.S. Sebastian reference, if you remember. I think Beth had invited us out for a drink, maybe nudging me and Aurelie closer to each other. I don't know. I don't know how I don't know how things work in the neurotypical world. I can only guess. But at the time, I just thought we were going out for a drink as friends. So we went to a pub nearby. It wasn't at night or anything, it was just in the daytime. For some reason, we all drew on each other's hands. Again, I don't know what this is about. It's some sort of neurotypical flirting. I really don't know. So I think, what did I draw? I can't remember. I know Beth drew the monkey on my hand, and she spelled it like that. I think I probably drew the cat on Aurelie's hand. And then Aurelie drew that on Beth's hand. Pointless, but that's what happened that day. Nothing much to discern from this, other than if this was some sort of introductory flirting technique, I had no idea about it. I think this was maybe the last techno whinge in this comic series. Sometimes you just have to get your frustrations out, don't you? My modem constant problems. I think I had modem problems up until probably about 10 years ago. I don't know if things were just more glitchy back then. But yeah, the Zelda the Wind Waker arrived, which I've been really looking forward to because I just loved how it looked. And I was looking forward to embarking on this really, really good adventure, which I never actually finished. I got close and never actually finished it. I think things were just a bit more awkward with games back then, and the Wind Waker is still awkward actually. I bought the HD version on the Wii U, and I still never finished that because I realised that there are no save points in the dungeons as opposed to modern games. So you would be committed to running like an hour-long dungeon before you could save the game. And if you died, you'd have to do it again, so you have to start again, so it would take longer. It was always a bit too much a time investment for me. But I did love my GameCube. I was never the GameCube was the first console that I got in with Nintendo. I was kind of anti-Nintendo before then. I was more of a Sega and then a Sony PlayStation guy. And I was kind of anti-Nintendo, but then I did play some ones, a friend of mine, and I think I remember playing. It was, funnily enough, I know some people hate it. It was Super Mario Sunshine, and I just thought the presentation and the controls and the aesthetic of everything, it was just so fun. Absolutely, just real good fun game. So you can't deny your feelings sometimes, can you? So I went and bought a GameCube because they were on their way out by this point, and they were going cheap, and the games were going cheap as well. So yeah, I stocked up on GameCube games. So the next day is jumping into the Nintendo wagon a little bit more. Um, I'd never had a Game Boy. I never had. I think the first Game Boy I had was the Game Boy Advance, and that was actually I could never justify buying one for myself. My first Game Boy Advance was given to me as payment for some work. It was the company I used to work for. They wanted me to do to design some postcards for them to advertise Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate. It was a Baldur's Gate 2, maybe, and it was the expansion packs. Throne of Baal was it? I'm not too familiar with it, but I had to design some postcards for those promotional things. And I asked for like £100 for that work, and my friend who got me the work, he said, well, I was he told me that he was told it was a bit awkward to pay me money, but would I take a Game Boy Advance instead? Which was, so I think it was like £120 it would cost. Yeah, sure, whatever. So I got paid with a Game Boy Advance, and then I got I guess that was maybe my first games, my first Nintendo console. So the GBASP had come out. This is the one with the silver one with the like clamshell design, and it was a game on Oxford Street. They were selling it with a special Zelda pack. You'd get Zelda. Oh, it's not the Minish Cap. Was it the Minish Cap? No, it was. It wasn't it. I think it was the remake of Link to the Past. I think it was that. And they had two packs. It was the Zelda pack and there was some other game as well. I can't remember. They did another pack I wasn't interested in. So there were two colors. There was silver and I think it was black. I might be wrong. But yeah, this has been kind of an arsehole here. This person was just pleasant enough, just asking me what I wanted, what color do you want, silver, and what a stupid question. I'm being just a little shit here, and then they just go and get Zelda. So the game was separate, but they bundled them together. So I waited. They gave me the SP, but then we're out of stock of Zelda. So they said you can come back another time and pick it up, but I was very upset by this. I had to, and I've experienced this even up, in my 40s. I'll have an expectation about you go to a shop to pick up a specific thing, and you kind of play the scenario out in your head. And this is a thing for autistic people. It can occur more severely in others, but I know myself. I will plan out the journey in my head and what will happen, what my expectations are going to be, especially if it's just something as simple as going to buy something. I know the shop layout. I might need to have a little look where it is, but I know they will have it in stock. I will buy it. I will come home, and when that is sort of scuppered by them maybe not having it in stock, it is really kind of crushing. So I'm saying I hate you here. And it probably was a feeling of hate, not for this person, but maybe to an internal hate at my own expectations, but a hate at the scenario not playing out like I'd expected. So, I got to go home with the Game Boy Advance SP, but nothing to play on it. So it was kind of pointless. So that was a little bit gutting. So this bus stop was I'll show you where it was actually. I wonder if it's still there. So last time we were looking, if you didn't see the last video, we were looking at where a lot of these things take place in Google Maps. So that was my house I lived in on Coulter Road near Hammersmith in London. So that bus stop I think was around about, it was definitely on Goldhawk Road up here, but where it was along here I can't, there it is. So so my house was Coulter Road there, and I used to walk. It wasn't. It probably looks further than it is. I used to walk up here to this bus stop. Should we zoom in on that? Should we have a look at the street view? Are you going to let me? Come on. Here we go. I used to get the bus here to work and just into London. I can't remember where I was going. I was going somewhere in the evening. I think I was probably. I want to say I was going to Beth's, but I don't think I was. So I don't know where I was going actually. But it was in the evening time, and then you would get sort of drunks and strange people coming up to talk to you. And this guy, he was an oldest guy. He looked drunk. He looked a bit. I don't know if he was homeless. But he looked a bit dishevelled. And this is, I don't know if it's just my own problems with people and communicating, but he did just. That's all I could understand is blah 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 time. I was like, looked at my watch, 6:15, and then it sounded like he said like night, like it might have been night, like he was asking if it was 6:15 at night, but I just looked at him blank because I didn't understand. It was just a noise, like night, and he's like, then he starts getting more aggressive, night, night, and then yeah, and then he just sort of rolled his eyes at me and walked away. And I did think he was a bit of a freak. I was probably, again, this is a little bit mean. He probably had a lot of troubles going on. But there were a lot of times like this where I just felt unsafe, and that's a big autistic thing as well, especially in social situations. It's why I rarely leave the house. It's to do with your own feeling of personal safety. When something like that happens, you don't know what's going to happen. But I did feel a bit unsafe and felt a bit angry that this guy had acted like this with me. So these just another one of these sort of thoughts. I think there's a whole Reddit now, a subreddit called Shower Thoughts. This was me literally having a thought in the shower, and this happened quite a few times. I'm sure it happens to lots of people though, where you'd look at something, some writing. It actually happens later on, and it's one of my important comics in terms of readership featured me misunderstanding a word on a sign. But this was Radox shampoo. I don't know if Radox is still going, but they used to write with sea minerals underneath. But for some reason, I just thought it said sea monkeys one day. Wondered if how gross that would be to have sea monkeys in a shower gel. Yeah, this is a conversation that did take place. This is my friend Rich, who I don't speak a lot to anymore. I think there's a strip later, and I'll mention him later as well. He's a really good friend of mine from. I lived with him when I was at university in my final year of uni. We became really, really good friends. He's a really, really great guy. I didn't know what he looked like at this point, though, so I just he probably didn't. Although he said he did probably look a bit like this with spiky hair, because he used to have very floppy Central Park in 90s sort of rom-com hair. But apparently he did. I saw him a bit later, and he had, I think he cut himself frosted tips, spiky hair. So he was engaged to a girl called Callie, and I was talking to him on the phone one night. I was in my room, and he's saying, so me and Callie are looking to buy a house now, and it suddenly felt like, and this is one of these things I was talking about in the first video with executive age versus physical age, and how I felt so much younger and less mature than a lot of my peers. And this is an example of that. I was in my my small bedroom in a shared house. So I was like, yeah, everyone's like that now. You look on Friends Reunited, which, I don't know if anyone remembers that, the precursor to Facebook, and everyone's getting married or buying a house or having kids. And I'm sat in my bedroom in a shared house, just had a pizza for tea, which, as mentioned in the other one, I would just often get pizzas myself, and playing Zelda on my GameCube. So I'm basically living like a teenager, and I've got him saying haha. He probably did laugh, but this is ripped off of James Kochalka as well. There was a James Kochalka American Elf strip where he said something quite personal, upsetting to a friend, or someone had, and they replied with haha. And I just found it funny. You're maybe reaching out to you about your difficult situation, and someone just laughs about it. But I didn't say it in a way that was supposed to be upsetting for Rich. So he did laugh, but I found it was a funny way to finish that strip. But yeah, it's crazy. Even now on Facebook, there were people I used to go to school with who the one guy's a grandfather now. It's like Jesus, that's my son's 7. It's a bit crazy. So let's move on. So yeah, this isn't a day when I used to call text SMS messages. I kind of used to refuse to call them text because text, to me, probably autistic way of thinking, the text was the message. It was made up of text, characters. It was a text. It was text, and I used to call them SMSs or SMS messages. I've changed now. I've got on board with calling them text. Okay, so yeah, out of the blue, orally, he did send me a message just saying this was her message. Come meet us for a drink. Could be cool. I was always keen for, and again, I didn't think that anything was going to happen here. I didn't think it was inviting me out for a sort of date because it was her and her housemate. I just thought it was inviting me out for a drink, just as friends. And I was always keen to try and fit into that social thing, to try and go out with friends and be social. And wasn't me, but I tried. So whenever anyone asked me to go out, oh, we've got this party, or we're going out here, or we're going out for food, I'd always, more often than not, go. Unless I was feeling really, really uncomfortable about it, and then I would make excuses not to. So I did meet her. It was somewhere near Baker Street, which is around, God, where is it there? So I think, so orally, just a little bit of information. She worked in the same sort of weird, Beth worked in a little shop, and it kind of sold like lamps and oils and things like that, like aroma things. I don't think I ever went in there, and Orally worked in there with her, so that's how they knew each other. So I think Orally lived around here somewhere. So it was easy for me to get to Baker Street because I would go to Goldhawk Road and get the Circle line, the yellow one, to Baker Street. So I think we met around there. So we had a little chat in there with her and her friend. Orally was French, and her friend was French. So occasionally they just speak French to each other. I used to like to just listen to them. I don't think I needed to understand what they were saying. As long as they weren't talking French to each other and then would look at me and then laugh, I was okay. I was okay with them just talking French to each other. But we went to a club after that, and we ended up having a bit of a kiss, and then I spent the night at hers. But I had. So this kind of leads on to. I didn't expect this to happen, by the way. It just kind of happened, which is kind of cool at the time. Now, I didn't plan on this. I ended up having like 1 hour of sleep that night, and I can't remember where her flat was now. It was somewhere near. It was somewhere near Abbey Road, which I think is up around here somewhere. So it wasn't too bad for me to get to work because everything's fairly accessible in London. But I had 1 hour of sleep, and the next day I was absolutely wrecked. And this is what this strip does. It was just called Zombie Day. I've never felt so tired. I felt like The Walking Dead. So there were times when this is my boss, as I mentioned in a previous strip, Stuart. This was a guy called Craig, who I used to work with at a previous job. And he just happened to be working here, and he was like a familiar face. I didn't work too closely with him at a previous job, but I knew him, and he was a really friendly Kiwi guy from New Zealand. So I drew him as a little Kiwi because I'm unimaginative like that. Because he was kind of, you'd reach a point where you would have too many guys just in a shirt with spiky hair. He had a goatee, but they would all kind of look the same. So I think that's another reason why I like to do them as little animals. And I think Kiwis are very proud of being called Kiwis and the Kiwi bird. So I knew there was nothing too offensive here. He quite liked that he was a little Kiwi. So that's why I drew him. He was a project manager there. So I was talking about like website design with Stuart and Craig. I was not taking anything. All I could think about was the night before and how tired I was. I could not concentrate. And they'd be like, so what do you think? And it's like, oh God, they were just asking me something. I can't remember how I got out of this. But yeah, shit, what the hell were they talking about? Think. They weren't too bad. We were a really relaxed company in that office. The guys were all really relaxed, and they knew that I that they knew about what happened the night before. I must have told them I'd only had like an hour's sleep. Um, but I just remember getting home from work that day, and the bus ride home, even though it was about 20 minutes, it just felt like the longest bus ride ever. All I could think about was going to sleep in my bed. And I got home, and I can't remember if I even ate anything for dinner that night. I just got into bed, just collapsed, and slept for 13 hours. And I've just swore never to do that sort of thing again, never to only have an hour of sleep again. So this was yeah, what's this, the ninth? This is the next day. Yeah, so I met up with Aurelie again. So we had a little date the next day. I don't know how to call this trouble. So up until now, Star Wars was just kind of the original trilogy. So had I think actually I think the prequels had come out. This is 2003. Um, I didn't like any of them. I still have a kind of weird fondness for the Phantom Menace. I know it's probably the worst of them all. I won't go into why I have a fondness for it because it's nothing to do with these comics. But Aurelie on this date says she didn't like Star Wars, and Star Wars was massive for me. It was very much a special interest, but the original trilogy. And it's like when when the girl that you're seeing suddenly says, "Yeah, I don't like the thing you're into," oh God, it was gutting. And then she said, "Well, yes, she hasn't actually seen them." So, oh, right. Well, that's a relief. But why say you don't like them? Maybe it was just the language barrier. So yeah, so this is the 10th now. So this is how many? Is this a week on from when I went to get? Let's have a look. So that's the third. So it wasn't until the 10th. So that's like a week later from when I went in to get that Game Boy game. And this is when I actually picked it up. So, and the funny thing is that James Kochalka also did, I didn't copy him on this one, I swear. He actually did a comic with the same thing. And I think this shows what a revelation it was to have a Game Boy with a backlit screen that would glow, because up until then the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance needed a light on it for you to see. They were dreadful. My original handheld was a Game Gear. I saved it for a year for that when I was like 15, and that had a backlit screen. And then so the Game Boys always felt like regressive technology to me, even though they had a better battery life. So yeah, he did one exactly the same. It's just showing how amazing I thought the backlit screen was, and I could play Zelda in bed. So I don't know about this new Game Boy. It doesn't really feel like I've got something new, which didn't from the. It was pretty much the same as the GBASP. It wasn't like it went from 16-bit to 32-bit or 64-bit or anything. So maybe I should really test the backlight. Where's the power switch? I mean, I don't think that it will. Ooh, because it was just wow, I can play this in the dark. It's amazing. So nothing to reflect on here in regards to autism. Just amazed at new technology, or old technology being used in a new system. So this comic I feel a little bit ashamed of, just from the words that I use now. But at the time, this is what I actually said. This is what I muttered under my breath. And I probably would mutter similar things today. And it's again about me feeling safe when I'm out and how people react. And it's a reason I don't drink anymore either. Certain people when they're drunk are fine. Certain other people when they're drunk do stuff like this, and they suddenly become unpredictable, and it makes me feel unsafe. And that's another reason why I don't like to go out drinking or to pubs or anything like that. So this was in the daytime, by the way. I was going somewhere. I was probably walking to that bus stop again. So this was. See if I can remember, because I do remember all these incidents. That's the good thing about this comic. So where was have I? Hang on, what's going on here? Goldhawk Road. Have I lost my place now? I'll tell you what. Let's close that. Let's go to Coulter Road. I spun it round. Okay. So this was this. So I think this was probably around here. I think Hammersmith Grove. So I think this was the way I used to walk. It was kind of up up here and across here, and then it would be more of a instead of zigzagging through all these little streets, it was along this road, and it was probably around, like, I don't know, somewhere along here. All these cars are in the way. Somewhere along here. So this is at the end there. That's Goldhawk Road, where the bus stop is, and I used to walk up here. So it was probably somewhere along here. I think it was like maybe up here somewhere, along here. All these charging points weren't there back then. And yeah, there was a couple. There was a woman and a guy and a girl who was very drunk, spinning and going woo. Ah! I don't know why. And that's my thought. And I could see it. You can see danger coming at you. What you perceive as danger. It's like someone being unpredictable coming at you. Great, some drunk girl twirling towards me, and I'm just, don't twirl into me, don't twirl into me. I should have just maybe crossed the road. And then she twirled and bumped into me. Now, whether she did that intentionally, thinking she was being playful, I don't know. But God, it pissed me off. Things like that too. So yeah, I called her. I muttered "stupid bitch," and she went off laughing. So a bit of a tone shift here. It's all been fairly light-hearted until this point. I was very grumpy there. Um, yeah, I got this again, another little slice of life. Probably one of the more interesting things that happened. I went to see Blur. This is after their Think Tank album, which I didn't actually like. I think this is and quite upsetting. This is when Graham Coxon had left them, their guitarist. So it wasn't the original lineup they had. I can't remember which guitarist stood in for him, but he just wasn't quite the same. You know, the basics were there, but they didn't have Graham Coxon's little twiddles and little noodles and things like that in there, so it wasn't quite the same. They were promoting their Think Tank album, which I say I didn't really like, but they played a lot of like the hits, you know. And I was a massive Blur fan up until Think Tank. So, but I loved seeing them. I actually went with Auralee because I bought. This is probably quite sad. I've been to a lot of gigs on my own. I've been to quite a few with someone else, but more often than not, I think my music taste would often be a little bit odd. A lot of alt rock and indie bands, but bands that maybe aren't the general public aren't too aware of. I'm probably sounding a bit pretentious there, but it's just the way it was. So I'd see bands in London that they were the most favourite band in the world to me. Like there was a band called Pond from Oregon, who used to be on Sub Pop, and I had to go and see them on my own, and it was the best gig I've ever been to. I absolutely loved it. It was at the Garage in London, and I was just stood right on the front. I suggested a song for them to play, and they played it. They said, "Oh, I don't think people really know that here because it was only released on a 7-inch in the States." And I said, "Yeah, but I know it," and they played it, and it's, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So I've been to a lot of gigs on my own, but I usually end up having a good time once the band comes on. So with Blur, I thought, well, this is Blur in London, and this was at the LA2, which sadly isn't there anymore, London Astoria 2. Can I find it on? So it's near. No, it's not near King's Cross. Where is it near? Tottenham Court Road. Tottenham Court Road Station. So they've actually demolished it now, and it's gutting because I saw a lot of bands at London Astoria. So it was on Charing Cross Road. So I think it was like, let's have a look here. I think it was like here. They've built this big office block here now. Yeah, the Starbucks there. So this is where the London Astoria 2 was, the LA 2. And the London Astoria was, I think, up here somewhere. I've only been to like 2 gigs there. I saw Korn there. It was a very small venue. I think it was the first time Korn played in the UK. small crowd. Probably again, amazing gig. The next time I saw Korn was at a bigger venue, and I hated it. But so the LA2 was here. You used to have to queue um, up this. Oh God, you can see they're still building it there. Street Maps is funny, isn't it? You used to have to queue up the side of this road. Um, but so this is where I saw Blur. I saw Nine Inch Nails here as well. I had ticket number one, amazingly. Um, so I saw Blur there. Now I used to have to queue up for tickets back then. Well, you could probably call Ticketmaster, but I used to like to queue up. It would give me something to do. I bought two tickets for Blur because I thought I'm bound to find someone who'll go with me, or I could entice a girl I know to go with me, kind of a date type thing. And no one, no one did. So thankfully, I'd sort of met orally before the gig happened, and I asked her to go with me, and she did. I don't know how well she knew Blur, but she went with me. Funnily enough, though, Beth and her boyfriend both gutted because I didn't know because they were kind of goths, but like Beth had dreads and her boyfriend had dreads. They're kind of I don't know, like cyber goth type people, I guess maybe. I don't know. Probably get my subcultures mixed up. So I didn't think they'd like Blur at all, but they apparently did. They said they absolutely loved them, so they were gutted that I gave my spare ticket to Orally. But yeah, the highlight for me was seeing Blur live. And then not much I could have said about that. I saw Blur tonight. I've got Damon Albarn jumping. It was good because I've wanted to see them since There's No Other Way came out, which was one of their first singles. And then, I got home and cooked a bagel, and a little bit of it had fire on it, which I thought was cool. And this was another one of those points where the people who wrote that review of my comic said how boring I was because they found criticism with the fact that all I could write about was that there was a bit of fire, my bagel caught fire. I thought that was cool. Sorry. Now this is another one. There's lots here I'm embarrassed about, and it's the last panel here because it was quite sweet. There was a McDonald's opposite where we worked, so let's go back to Google Maps, and it's called Queensway. So let's go to Queensway where I worked. There's Bayswater Tube. So our building was down here. It was this. So if I get into Street View, and there is a McDonald's. Where is it? It's down here. You can see it from there. The Golden Arches. There we go. It was this McDonald's there. And I didn't go in there that often, not as much as you might think. For lunch, I mostly used to go down to. They had a little sort of shopping mall down here. Oh God, that's gone now. There used to be a shopping mall in there, and they had a Marks and Spencer's food hall in there. So I used to get sandwiches mostly because it was cheaper. I knew I couldn't eat McDonald's all the time. Although I stopped eating McDonald's for quite a while, and I still don't really eat it much these days. It's after I read Fast Food Nation. So it wasn't so much about the food, but the sort of business practices I didn't like. A little bit of a boycott. It was in that McDonald's, and there was an old guy in front of me asking the server for his usual, and she just looked at him blank. So he obviously went in there quite a lot and maybe got into his head that they knew him and knew what he wanted. So then he had to tell her what his usual was, and I felt really sorry for him. And it was just like a large tea and a cheeseburger or something. And I did felt sorry for him, but I'm trying to be funny here, and it's not funny at all. But clearly a little nuts. He's crazy, old man. He wasn't crazy. He was probably just lonely. So I'm a bit embarrassed about this one. So we'll just do a couple more then. This will be like halfway through. What time are we looking at here? This is like 40 minutes. This is way too long. So this was a bad day. Our boss is a guy called Nigel. He's a lovely guy. He decided to resign. And then he's just told us he quit. But there was nothing put in place for what was going to happen to us. So it's like, what's going to happen now? And then it's just one of those things. Maybe on a normal day, one of these things would happen. You'd be like, "Oh, that was a bit rubbish, wasn't it?" or maybe you notice it more when really bad things happen. So first of all, I'm wondering, am I losing my job again after out of being out of work for a year, up until 4 months ago? Suddenly, oh, you might be out of work again. It's, oh Christ, not again. Um, back, moving back to my parents, and then I got home and I'd ordered the earphone adapter for the GBASP, so I could play it on the tube with audio, because it didn't have an audio socket on it. They had like one socket. You had to buy a special adapter to plug headphones into. But they sent me the wrong thing. They sent me an in-car adapter, and I can't even think what you'd have an in-car adapter for. Maybe I think it was maybe to charge. No, because it had batteries. Did it have batteries? I think it was just maybe a charging cable. That was it. It was a charging cable for the GBSP to plug into the another charging socket, the cigarette lighter in the car. So they sent me the wrong thing. So that's another thing that's gone wrong. Now I got and then we had these goldfish in our kitchen. Now they belonged to the one girl who lived there. But again, I keep going about how I was quite lonely, so I used to sort of, I don't know, talk to these fish when I was on my own in the house. I'd sing to them sometimes, but one of them died, and it was, oh, Jesus Christ. Now, I don't know if yin yang works like this. I don't think it does at all, but it just seemed like more of a good visual metaphor to say that there was more black in my life than more darkness than light at that point. I don't think that's how yin yang works, but there you go. It was a good way to sum it up. So this, and I'll stop after this one. This is just a little observation of mine. So this took place, and it stands out to me, this one, because I mentioned in the last video that I'd asked people what their favourite EM World strip was on the forum I used to have. And someone said that it was that one. I think that they said that was the first one this was the first one they'd seen, and it made them laugh, so they stuck with it. So this happened on my way home. So I think it was around about here. I think it was right here. So I used to walk down this road, across over here, and this old guy was there. And I didn't know how to summarize it. This wasn't I said an old man saw some string on the ground. He kicked it again, and then his work was done. So it was one of those the plastic, the sort of harsh plastic things they wrap around some packages. It's like flat and a little bit rugged, and you have to cut it. And it was a piece of and it retains its shape, so that's why it's there. And I think he just tried to kick it off the pavement into the gutter, and he gave two very weak kicks. It didn't go in the gutter, and he just gave up. And it's just one of those little slices of life that that just tickled me, and it just gave me something different to write about other than myself. So we'll leave it there for now. It will get a bit more interesting as I go on. Right now, we're in the early phases where it's kind of just me trying to select little humorous bits of life, or little things that happened to me when I was still kind of new in London and trying to find my way. As time goes on, I think I start to get fed up that life isn't working out for me, and I'm struggling with it. But for now, it is just these little incidents. All right, so yeah, if you want to like the video or comment, feel free to. It doesn't matter. I'm not, this isn't my job. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe or anything like that. If you do want to ask any questions, feel free to, though, and I'll try and reply. All right, thanks. I'll see you in the next one.